The opinions within the content of Channel 12 TV network are solely of our guest and do not reflect the views and beliefs of its hosts or affiliates. Those under 18, we ask that you enter the Channel 12 TV network with an adult.
So proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous height, oh, the ramparts we were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets that glad, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Republican Town Hall Meeting channel on Channel 12 TV Network. And it's a beautiful day here in Illinois. I have a special guest today. His name is David Shestokas. He's a lawyer, political, and book writer. And David is an attorney licensed in Illinois and Florida and author of Constitutional Soundbites. He earned his BA in political science from Bradley University and JD from the John Marshall Law School, cum laude. While serving on the John Marshall Law Review, he studied law at Trinity College in Dublin, Ireland. He has served as Assistant State's Attorney for Cook County, is currently a hearing officer on board the Chicago Board of Elections. In 1990, he was a Republican nominee for the United States Congress in the Illinois 5th Congressional District, and understanding the importance of local offices and elections. He served 8 years as Lamont Public Library trustee in 2016 in Broward County, Florida, working with the Trump-Rubio campaign. He discovered 150,000 ballots that had been opened illegally in secret behind locked doors. From October 22 through November 26, 2020, he was in Pennsylvania as part of the Lawyers for Trump team. In that time, he organized 70-plus ballot processing observers in Allegheny County, Pittsburgh, interviewed and verified information from whistleblowers, conducted provisional ballot hearings as the president's representative before electoral boards, collected and classified over 300 affidavits regarding election irregularities from both PA and Michigan, attended federal court in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, with Mayor Giuliani and his team, and testified before the Pennsylvania State Committee hearing in Gettysburg on the day before Thanksgiving. From candidate to counselor to law enforcement official, Dave has been involved in elections and election law for over 30 years. Most recently with the National Republican Senatorial Committee in Georgia, and worked with Judicial Watch as counsel in Illinois Conservative Union versus Illinois State Board of Elections. He is the author of 2 books, Creating the Declaration of Independence and Constitutional Soundbites, available on Amazon, in print, and in Kindle. He is the author of the 2 books, like we just said. His latest book, Creating the Declaration of Independence, which is sort of dear to my heart, takes you into the middle minds of Richard Henry E. Lee, John Adams, and Thomas Jefferson in the weeks before the July 4th, 1776. Experience Lee's trepidation as he knows when he has purposed American independence to the Second Continental Congress that he is literally risking beheading. Join Adams and Jefferson at City Tavern as they begin crafting the Declaration, and follow the story of how Jefferson became to reluctantly draft the Declaration when few others, including Adams, thought that Jefferson's assignment was important. You'll even learn a shortcut Jefferson used to craft a document of such immortality on such short notice, and how that shortcut affects the work of the Supreme Court today. And without further ado, here comes Dave on stage.
Hello.
Hello, Dave.
Hello, James. Thank you so much. It's great to be with you and have the opportunity to talk to the people in your audience, and hopefully maybe some people we can help build that audience. You're doing some great work down there, bringing interesting people to your channel, and I'm so glad we had the opportunity to meet and get together, and now we have an opportunity to talk about a couple of things.
Right. Yeah. We first met up Oak Brook at the Conservative Caucus at the Drake Hotel.
That's correct. That was quite the evening when former Governor Blagojevich was there addressing folks, and just instructed the crowd on what freedom means, and how important having a judicial system that follows the rule of law is. And so of course, Governor Blagojevich invented that term Trumpocrat now.
Yep.
And I've been lucky enough to see him and spend some time with him in the 4 years since President Trump originally pardoned him. And he's just doing amazing work in carrying the message of basically freedom forward, and indicating that some of these things have nothing to do with, a lot of these things have nothing to do with being Republican or Democrat. They have to do with being an American.
Yep. And I think people are losing that American value, especially over these last 4 years. I mean, what I've seen and heard, and what was going on with everything what the Biden administration was doing, and then what, can't think of her name. I wish, that's probably because I forgot her name.
Oh, Kamala.
Yes. And that was just, it was atrocious what they were doing, and trying to say, this is okay to do this, this is okay to do that, when, I mean, there's only 2 sexes. And I mean, I'll let you go on that one.
Oh, goodness gracious, Jim, they were doing more than that. They were not only rewriting biology, they were working to rewrite history with the whole 1619 project, and this false narrative that the country was not founded in 1776, but rather in 1619. There was a laundry list between the situation, like when the whole situation with women's sports, and the whole fact that we essentially did not have a border. If you don't have a border, you don't have a country. It was 4 years of just unbelievable destruction. And strangely enough, many people consider that to have been the 3rd term of Barack Obama, that the seeds of the destruction were set in place during Obama's first 8 years. And then Biden took it up and went even to the nth degree. So that there was 4 years there terrible. There was 8 years there terrible. We had this time in between when the deep state was fighting tooth and nail to see to it that President Trump was unable to put together any kind of important agenda. But my goodness, you talk about what happened over those 12 years, and now the last 4 months have been so exciting, and which tells you that the sense of the spirit of Americans and the situation where American exceptionalism still exists, and that we will still be doing great things.
Right. Now, why do you think the Democrats, that's why I see most of it coming from, and the real left side, is trying to trample our Constitution?
Well, the Constitution gets in their way. The Constitution is in fact meant to actually keep balance between what is going on. It's not supposed to allow you to make fast changes. It's supposed to have folks deliberate, and then little by little, if in fact society changes, respond to those changes through the through the electoral process. And so they don't like elections. Over the years since Franklin Roosevelt, the Democrats and the left really more often than not try to get their agenda through the courts rather than win it at the ballot box. And then ultimately, they did wind up with some ballot success, but the ballot success, and I'm pretty sure one of the things we're going to talk about has come not necessarily at legitimate success, but as success where I'd say the integrity of our elections has been undermined tremendously. It's pretty interesting. A couple of days ago, I saw on TV, I saw President Trump with a group of folks from CPAC, and included in that group was Mike Lindell. And the president was recognizing a lot of folks in the audience, and then he got to Mike Lindell and said, Mike, he said, now you're free to tell everybody that the election of 2020 was stolen.
Yeah, and see, I was over in Minden, Illinois in 2022 for a Trump rally.
I was there.
Really, I was too. Yeah, and I was in the seating area. You were probably behind the stands, but I was in the middle seating area. Got to meet Mike Lindell and heard him talk about the election, the voter fraud.
Yes.
And shortly after that, I think that's about 2 weeks after that, that's when the FBI pulled up behind him when he's going through a drive-through and confiscated his phone. You remember that?
Absolutely. They treated a guy as a criminal for exercising his right of free speech, which is a lot of what happened during the Biden 4 years. A lot of people had those kinds of issues. They treated a lot of the lawyers that way. They went after. Not only did they go after people criminally, and like the J6 folks, many of whom were not involved in any kind of illegal activity, but were simply exercising their constitutional First Amendment rights, sending them to jail. And that's exactly what Mr. Lindell has been doing over the last 4 years, and had what he'd been doing from 20 to 22, exercising his rights to free speech and his concerns. And the situation is crazy, in that you would think that a decent American would want to have the elections to be legitimate, regardless of what the outcome is, if the outcome in fact reflects the will of the people. And what's happened over time is there's been real reason to believe that the elections have not followed and reflected the will of the people. It was a few years ago, I was watching when the New York legislature passed a law that essentially allowed late-term abortions, for all practical purposes, infanticide. And the legislatures actually got up and they were clapping and cheering and patting themselves on the back. And I was watching that, and I'm going, there is no possible way that there is a majority of the people of the state of Illinois, or excuse me, of the state of New York, that actually want it to be legal to kill babies. And yet these people passed such a law. And they passed such a law close to similar here in the state of Illinois. And I would, and we'll talk a little bit more about elections in my personal experience, but I would tell people that every time you see a law passed that you don't understand how a legislative body could pass a law that's just crazy, that says men have to go to women's bathrooms, or capable of going into women's bathrooms if they want to, or they're infringing on free speech, or these some of these laws that allow searches and seizures without warrants.
Yep.
That you go, how can they be doing this? Well, that, my friend, is as much a argument for and evidence of election fraud.
Right.
That people are selected and not elected. That they don't care what elections are. Here, we're in Illinois. I will call your attention to something that's really simple. Okay, there is no way that there's a majority of the people of the state of Illinois that want their gas tax to go up automatically every year on the 1st of July without any more action by the legislature. They passed a law 5 years ago, 6 years ago, not long after Pritzker came into office, dinged an extra 19 cents on a gallon on the gas tax, and then put it in so that the gas tax would increase automatically every year on the 1st of July. Do you think there is any possible majority of the people of the state of Illinois that want to have their gas taxes increase on the few days before they're traveling around for the 4th of July holiday? I don't think so. That tells you that the legislature in Illinois has no fear of the electorate, that they have no concerns over elections. They will pass whatever they want. There's a famous saying from Thomas Jefferson that, in fact, if when the people fear the government, there's tyranny. When the government fears the people, there's freedom. And over the last 4 or 6 years, since the Bidens got in charge, and since before that, there's been a concern that where the people have actually been in fear of the government because they have been weaponizing the judicial system. And it's not just been President Trump that has suffered from that weaponization. I actually continue to represent, strangely enough, a fellow by the name of the Reverend Stephen Lee, who is a Lutheran pastor at a church here in Orland Park, Illinois, and who was indicted with President Trump in Fulton County, Georgia, for offering pastoral services in the state of Georgia for folks that were having issues because of all the concerns about the Georgia election. They indicted this man for knocking on a couple of doors and trying to offer pastoral services.
Yeah.
So the stories go well beyond. I mean, President Trump makes the headlines, obviously, and we are so blessed to have a man that would, in fact, say fight, fight, fight every day, even not counting the bullet that just barely missed, splattering his brains all over. Yep. But he did not give up, and where if you would say lesser mortal men would have. The fact is that's what the opposition wanted to do, because we can see what's happening now. He and his team are dismantling this overbearing government that has been intrusive on our lives in so many ways. They just Lee Zeldin, the new director of the EPA, just recalled $20 billion that they don't really know what it was supposed to do. And so those kinds of spending is that's another example that the people that were in charge of the government, the deep state, the bureaucrats that were running the government that didn't feel responsible to anybody, didn't care about elections. And in fact, not only didn't care about elections, they worked to overturn the will of the people, or to see that the will of the people is not executed. Exactly.
Yep, it's terrible. Since you mentioned the J6ers, you seem to have a good grasp on the Constitution. Tell me where it says, I know it does say it, about a government when it's in tyranny, a tyrannous government, and what that tells us, what our right or what we duty to do and how to do it the proper way?
Well, frankly, of course, the Constitution itself is is kind of a mechanical document. As you mentioned at the outset, I've written a book about the Declaration of Independence, and I've also got one about the Constitution. And the fact is that it's the Declaration that puts together the aspirations, and the Constitution that creates the mechanisms to execute the aspirations of the Constitution. And so, when you have the obligation, and you not only have a duty but almost the obligation to, in fact, fight the government when it's overturned. That comes in at the beginning of the Declaration. We've got the situation that what I refer to when I do talks about the Declaration is the American Creed, that starts out with, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among the governed based upon the consent of the governed." The next paragraph of the Declaration of Independence talks about what they call the right of revolution. And the right of revolution indicates that, in fact, when a government fails to protect the people's right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, it becomes their obligation to oppose that government and to overturn that government and reestablish a government so as to properly protect the given natural rights of the people. So it's the Declaration of Independence where we find those philosophies.
Okay.
And the interesting thing about that is that this country was the first country ever founded simply on a philosophy. Over the 10,000 years of human history, organizations of humanity were always kind of based on the strong will survive, and based on power or tribal familial relationships. This was the first time a country or a nation was founded upon those ideas about all men are created equal and more. And so it's very, very interesting. So what's interesting about that too is, from 1776 on, there's been about 110 new countries in the world. Over 100 of them announced their beginning and their birth to the world with a document modeled after the Declaration of Independence. So it was worldwide in its impact and its influence. And so these are important things. And the unfortunate thing is we don't teach those anymore.
No.
James, we don't teach those because that's the glue to hold us together. That's why I call those 55 words the American Creed. The truth is if all of it, and I do talks on that issue alone from time to time, and I don't find and I've done talks like that in Black churches and in Hispanic areas and with groups and of all demographics and all kinds of creeds. And it doesn't matter when I get through explaining the 55 words of the American Creed, there is no one in the room whose head is not bouncing up and down. We don't teach it because if we all knew it and shared it, they wouldn't be able to slice us and dice us into the little different.
Like they say, knowledge is power.
Yes. Yeah. But everybody, frankly, those 55 words, I've not found anybody that disagrees with them.
No.
Everybody disagrees with them, but we don't teach that. That's the foundational principles of America.
Well, here's what I look at, and the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. And to me, and I told people when J6 first happened, I said that was the tip of the iceberg, because people are tired of getting their rights stepped on, being silenced. And what other way can people show, hey, we're upset that, I don't like violence, but when they're getting stepped on all the time, you're getting silenced. What else opportunity do they have to get it out there and wake up the government? Was January 6th a wake up call? Was it let to happen, which I've heard too? Okay. And it's, and, I'll let you piggyback on that one.
I have my own curious individual perspective on January 6th. And that's because nobody recollects this, and it's lost to memory. But in the aftermath of the election, November 2020, there was a situation in the state of Georgia relative to the two Senate elections that were held in the state of Georgia. And the state of Georgia requires that somebody win 50% of the vote to win election. And if that doesn't happen, then the top two vote getters in an election have what they call a runoff. And in both Senate elections, there was for the United States Senate, no one got 50% of the vote, so they had a runoff election. The David Perdue was the sitting senator, and Kelly Loeffler, who is now the head of the SBA, was the other sitting senator. And I was monitoring. I went to work for the Republican National Lawyers Association to monitor the elections in Georgia, and had been going almost for 2 weeks daily to a facility in Clay County where they were processing mail-in ballots and other things. I was doing that with another attorney. There was two situations where we were overlooking the validation of signatures on mail-in ballots, and then the actual processing of the ballots themselves. And then ultimately, I worked with the Dominion voting machines to do what they call a voter recap. But in any event, on January the 5th, which was election day in Georgia for the United States Senate, that evening, the Senate, in both Senate campaigns were within very, very close. Senator Perdue was within a half a point, within a couple of points, and Senator Loeffler was close as well. On the other hand, we were still going to do work on January 6th, because on January 6th in Georgia, any ballots that had come in, mail-in ballots that had come in on the 5th of January before the close of the polls on January 5th, were processed on the 5th of January, or excuse me, on the 6th of January. And so myself and my partner, another attorney, went to the same facilities that we'd been going to for almost 2 weeks, from shortly after Christmas until the 5th of January. And the place where they were going to process the ballots that came in on the last day of the election was locked up tighter than our drum. They did not allow any observation. They did not allow anybody to come in on the last day, counting the last ballots that came in. We went over to the other facility where they were validating signatures on the envelopes, locked up tighter than a drum. The state of Georgia, there was lawyers from the Republican National Lawyers Association all over the state. And as we all filtered back into the headquarters in Atlanta, all the reports were the same. None of us could get in the places to observe the final count of the final ballots. And in my mind, the United States Senate was stolen on the 6th of January, 2021.
Was that do you think the blockage of that was actually from the local precincts or the local commission, or was it from the opposing party, the Democrats?
They were in charge of the county offices. What can I tell you?
Okay. That's it right there.
They were in charge of the county offices. They had the keys. Okay. They had the keys. And all across the state, these facilities were locked up, and nobody was allowed to observe the final processing of the final group of ballots that took the election results over and above what was the mandatory recount number in the state of Georgia.
Now, tell me a little bit. I haven't seen the process of the mail-in ballots and how they do that. They say they have to be marked at a certain date. is that enough time to count those mail-in ballots? And are they counted manually? Or are they fed through a machine? Explain the process for that.
Well, every state does it a little bit differently. I've been involved in monitoring that back to 2016. I've probably been involved in monitoring the processing of mail-in ballots in, let's see, in 2016 and 2018, someplace in 2020. I was off in 22, but in 24, I also did monitoring of the processing of mail-in ballots. And that's a disgrace that people do not understand, that this is the place where, in fact, the elections are overturned, where people are selected and not elected. If you remember back, at least in my days when I was younger and whatnot, if you couldn't make it on election day, you would notify the county clerk, and they would make arrangements, and you would have what was called an absentee ballot. Well, the absentee ballots in that situation would go out to the precinct, where once you voted it, you'd voted early, but once you voted it, it would, on election day, it was sent out to the precinct where you were supposed to vote, had you been in town or not in the hospital or not otherwise indisposed. And so what they did, like I say, there's in Chicago, there's 3,000 precincts. Okay, so they would take the absentee ballots, and they would send them out to the 3,000 locations where people would vote. And of course, those 3,000 precincts have election judges, and those election judges are folks like, oh, I don't know, the nuns at the convent where they're voting, or my mom, or somebody else's grandma, or the other folks in the local neighborhood, or the election judges, and looking over things. So it was quite decentralized, where they would send out these absentee ballots. And so so there was not the opportunity to do nefarious or unscrupulous things with the absentee ballots. However, now with the advent of these massive mail-in ballots, what happens is they now go to a central processing facility, and in places like Broward County, where I was working, and places like even Clay County, which was a smaller county in Georgia, or even or Cook County. I did stuff in Will County, Illinois. Sometimes there would be hundreds of thousands of ballots all coming to one single facility. And they would go through the machines, and they would be coded, and the machines would sort them out, et cetera, et cetera. Then these days, very often they have this situation where the signatures are scanned on the outside of the envelopes, and then the envelope scanned signature gets called up on a computer screen and scrolls by with the voter registration of the voter. And you have folks sitting there looking at a screen going, okay, that looks good to me. That looks good to me. That looks good to me. And they just keep tapping along and letting all the signatures go by without any real look. And strangely enough, while I was in Pennsylvania, in 2020, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court issued some ruling that said, well, because of COVID, they didn't even have to check signatures. And that went back and forth. There was changes every day. It was a zoo in Pennsylvania in 2020. I can tell you, I was there for 6 weeks. It was an utter zoo, and that's a whole separate story that I do an hour and change on Pennsylvania all by itself. But in any event, they then the process after they have there's a couple of people, ostensibly, supposedly, one person from each party watching the signatures. It's pretty difficult to come up with a Democrat and a Republican in, I don't know, Cook County, Illinois. There's folks that sit in there, many of whom are Republicans for a day, so that they get paid as election judges, right? And they hit them, and they go, "You think that's good? Yeah, I think that's good. Okay." And so you have this unholy situation where there's a single party dominance of the election machinery, and that is looking after the election. And then this massive concentration of hundreds of thousands of ballots coming into one place where essentially 4 or 5 people run the show. So it's not like you have in the old days where there would be essentially, let's say in the city of Chicago, essentially that would be spread out among 6,000 people.
Yep. Now I remember when I interviewed Natasha Owens, who sang the opening there,
Yes, sir.
and she said it wasn't the Dominion machines that was the issue in 2020. It was other things beyond Dominion. Now I don't know if that what your view is on what you've heard.
Oh, absolutely. It was beyond. No, it's beyond that. It's extraordinarily and complicated. They pulled out all the stops in 2020. Every of the traditional situations, just simple ballot stuffing, to more high tech things of running their computer algorithms and putting those together in a USB port that feeds into a particular election machine, and then votes the votes. It was really across the board relative to the whole situation with ballot harvesting that they would call. I don't, this whole thing with drop boxes. What do you need a drop? What's up with a drop box? Why
Right.
is that necessary? Don't you
Yeah.
have a post office to begin with?
That perturbed me because you don't know who is carrying. It's not that person carrying the own ballot in there. A lot of them, because I heard there were people that had stacks of ballots and they were dropping them in there.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
And you don't know if
the
they went
source
to
of the-
people's homes or whatever and got them. It's terrible.
And the source of the ballots is pretty interesting in many respects too. I'll tell you a quick thing about Pennsylvania, about Pittsburgh. We in fact had a hotline for voter fraud situations, and one of my colleagues got a call from a guy who said his business was demolition. He was demolish buildings, take down condemned buildings and whatnot. And so that was his business, and he had permits to demolish a certain number of buildings in Pittsburgh. A couple of weeks before the election, his permits to demolish those buildings were pulled.
Wow.
And he called us and told us that he went to the city and said, why? What's going on? He said, I've been doing demolition for years and whatnot, and and these buildings still need to come down. They're not safe, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the folks at the city told him, said, I probably shouldn't say this. He said, but the fact is that there's people registered to vote in those buildings.
Whoa.
So they did.
There's nobody in them?
This guy, and he had dinner with one of my colleagues, and he said, you guys can investigate this, but you can't say that it came from me. He said, because it'll kill both my business, my family, and maybe personally kill me if it gets out that I brought this to anybody's attention.
But there was nobody living in the buildings at all?
No, well, that's what we did. He gave us a list of some of the buildings, and we went out and we went to the buildings to confirm this. And that literally the stairs were falling down, the windows were boarded up, and stuffed in the window with the board up situation, stuffed in those boards was election mail, because of course the candidates didn't know that, or some of them at any rate were unaware that there was phony people registered to vote. They just get the list from the county, and then that's how they put together their mail pieces to send out their mail for elections.
Wow.
Ultimately, on the average of the half a dozen buildings we personally looked at, there was on average 34 people that registered to vote in each one of these buildings. Typically, there were 3 flats with 3 apartments in them, so they averaged about 11 voters an apartment in these buildings that were supposed to be demolished. And we did at the time track down, and votes came from the registered names at those condemned buildings.
Wow.
People votes were mailed in from those locations.
See, this is what my channel is about, is getting information like that out there, because as you and I know, the regular news isn't going to talk about it. They're not going to even give a sliver of it. And this is what the public need to know, what is actually going on. I
Yes,
mean, it's like when I interviewed Mark Rice, and you know Mark because Mark
I know
introduced
Mark
me to you.
well. Yeah.
Yeah. And he was talking about his election up there, the 8th Congressional District of Illinois for Congress. And there was voter fraud going on in 2024. And he has said later he got a message that day when I interviewed him that they actually found Trump ballots in the trash can.
Yes.
And it's like people said, well, it didn't happen this time. Well, there was illegals voting.
Well,
And
all over the country, there's reason to believe, as far as I'm concerned, that we probably, based on what the president's election numbers were, in a free and fair situation, we probably should have won about 15 or 20 more House seats than we did, and we probably should have won at least 2 other Senate seats, and maybe 3 or more. We certainly should have won Arizona and Michigan in regards to the Senate.
well, see
So
that brings me back to 2020 when Biden was running for office during the pandemic. Of course, you never saw him. He was out in the basement or whatever. And he was at the, I'm sorry, but
yeah,
he was up at Detroit at the Auto Workers Union, and I don't know if a foreman and something with the protective cap, and getting on Biden, and Biden pointed at him in that confrontation and says, "I don't work for you." Well, we elect if you're going to be elected. Now, why? See that when he said that, I'm going. Of course, I never liked Biden anyway when he was in Congress. Okay, pure and simple, because he didn't do shit. Okay, and how can you sit there as you're running for president and you point in the person's face and say, "I don't work for you"? Right there should tell the people who was voting for him that he's working for somebody else. And who was this somebody else? I know I have my opinions, but go ahead and piggyback on that.
well, that's of course that sometimes even the folks like that are inside and benefiting from these strange overtaking of our government. Sometimes they let the truth slip out, and certainly that was a moment. Joe probably let the truth slip out more than he intended to ever, because of course there was times when he just kind of lost it and was not in control. And
Right.
so it's but that's not unusual where the truth would slip out. But you can see again, that's the kind of thing when you look at laws that you cannot believe that the government passes, that tells you that the legislators are and in some instances the executive folks are answering to somebody other than the electorate.
Right.
You
And
know,
then also on that instance, I also remember when he in the news never replayed it, but it's out there. You can find it, where he said, "I have the best fraud team there is." But the news don't replay that because people have short-term memory and they forget what was said. And when you hear that and then what happened with the 2020 election, my opinion is it was there.
oh, it was clearly there. I personally observed things in Pennsylvania that I was involved in. And, it was kind of interesting. They were, if you saw any of the some of the hearings with Attorney General Bondi, and they were asking her opinion about whether or not they wanted her to say. They kept saying, "Well, did President Trump win the 2020 election? Do you think that the 2020 election was stolen?" And Attorney General Bondi kept saying, "Listen, if you want, let me tell you about what I saw in Pennsylvania." She wanted to tell stories about her personal observations, and of course they go, "Well, we don't want to hear about that. We just want your opinion." You go, "No, no, no," and she goes, "No, I don't want to give you my opinion. I want to tell you what I saw." But the senators that asked those questions didn't want her response, and they didn't want her actual observations, like my own observations in Allegheny County there and whatnot. So I had that observation. Then I did some follow-up work with some folks in Arizona. I did some consultations with members of the Arizona House while the aftermath was going on in Pennsylvania, or excuse me, in Arizona. I also was part and parcel of collecting affidavits from voter fraud and reports of voter fraud in both Michigan and Pennsylvania. I reviewed and vetted about 600 of those affidavits. And it's just, the list goes on and on. I actually ultimately was scheduled to, in fact, testify before a court in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, before the federal court. And at issue in that court case were about 600,000 ballots in Pennsylvania. And the judge, I was there on a Tuesday with Mayor Giuliani and his team. And I was scheduled to actually testify in that case as to things that happened in Pittsburgh. I was scheduled to testify on Thursday, and at the end of the hearing on Tuesday, well, let me back up for a moment. It's pretty typical that you bring a witness to a courtroom so that they can see what the courtroom looks like, so that they're accustomed and comfortable once they get on the stand, so that it's not the first time they've been there. So that's what I was doing there on Tuesday. And at the end of the hearing on Tuesday, the judge canceled the hearing that I was scheduled to testify at on Thursday. And then I wasn't the only witness, but the evidentiary witnesses in the case were scheduled to testify on Thursday, beginning on Thursday. The judge canceled that hearing, and then on Friday, the judge dismissed the case without ever hearing any evidence.
Yeah, it's like the New York. It sounds like that New York judge that was prosecuting Trump. I mean,
well, this was typical. You hear over the last 4 years, you typically heard everybody saying about how 60 lawsuits relative to election matters were lost, in 2020 and in the aftermath of 2020. I don't know of a single one where the judge heard any evidence. They all get pushed out on standing and other kinds of motions to dismiss and everything like that. And so there was no loss. There was a refusal on the part of the judiciary to hear the evidence for any number of reasons that are speculative on my part. But I was astounded what happened in Pennsylvania, because I was personally part of it. Ultimately, the Pennsylvania Senate on the day before Thanksgiving in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, I had a hearing, and they held hearings, and I got to testify about some of what I knew about Pittsburgh before the Pennsylvania Senate when they were doing that.
It seems like they have the predetermined outcome. I mean, that's why I hear, because I work part-time at a gas station, so I hear the word on the street, okay, and people talk. And the worst of it, people, for years, I worked there 4 years, and you talk about voting, and they always say, my vote don't count. And they say the outcome is already predetermined. And my thing is, how do we change those type of voters' minds, or non-voters? And I think the election system has to really, like you said, tighten down. And I think you were going to talk about the voter roll and all that. So there's what I have a problem trying to tell people. Yeah, one vote, but still your vote counts, because if you look at a lot of people that say my vote don't count, but you get those people to vote, then it does count, because you build up those votes. And how in the heck in 2020 did Biden have roughly 20 million more voters than all the other presidents before him, and even Trump this last 2024 election? How does that work?
Well, let's talk about that. Gives us a perfect entree to talk about Los Angeles County and what's been going on there. As an introduction to that, there's something called the National Voter Registration Act that was passed in 1993, known pretty much as motor voter, primarily because it was through that law that the secretaries of state or the Department of Motor Vehicles, depending on your state, was mandated to create a circumstance that when people got driver's licenses, they were given an opportunity to register to vote. And so this began to bloat the voter rolls. In theory, there's also a little box on the driver's license voter registration form where you're supposed to check that you're a citizen of the United States under penalty of perjury. Nobody checks that. I mean, nobody oversees to whether or not you're telling the truth on whether you're a citizen or not. That's left up to the honesty of whoever it is that's applying for the driver's license. And of course, here in the state of Illinois, they've passed a law that allows folks that are not only not citizens, but folks that are not even legally in the country to obtain licenses to drive.
Yes. And why allow that? I mean, because I've seen it too. I work at the gas station. You get the from Mexico or Honduras, they're coming through and they want to buy beer. Well, we have to, our gas station makes us scan IDs. And guess what? There may be 3 or 4 of them, but not a one has a driver's license. So they're driving illegally because they don't have a driver's license. Now, why do we want to give illegals driver's licenses? You don't know really, you don't have probably any birth certificates somehow. I mean, they came across, say if they came across illegally, you don't know their real names. It's a sad situation where Illinois Governor Pritzker is putting our state through. Go ahead.
Well, the best estimate at the moment is that the best estimates that I've heard, and because of my involvement in some things, I know some folks that are great statistical analysts on voter rolls and those kinds of things. The best estimate is there's about 800,000 inappropriate, ineligible, or illegal or lousy registrations on the Illinois voter rolls. Somewhere about 800,000 names on those rolls that shouldn't be there for any number of reasons, not the least of which is some are just phantoms. Some are just made up. Some are people that have died that should have been removed from the voter rolls, and some, unfortunately, these days are folks that when they got their driver's license, checked the box that says, "Yeah, register me to vote," and they check the box that says, "Are you a citizen?" And I might even say they don't even know if they're checking the box right or not when it comes to "Are you a citizen?" But they check the box, in which case they're automatically registered to vote. And over time, there are folks on the bad guys, if you will, that can quite well figure out who's checked the box that shouldn't have. And then they wind up with the ballots that they pick up at the condemned buildings.
Yeah, I'm glad you put that out there, and I hope people listen to it. Especially that. I mean, ballots in vacant buildings. I mean, it's wow. But one thing.
That's how they get there. That's where some of the registrations come from, But so I'm not even saying the people that get the driver's licenses are necessarily doing something bad. They may not even understand what they're doing, because of course it is a lie and under the penalty of perjury to do that. But I've yet to hear of anybody prosecuted for checking the box that says, "Yeah, I'm a citizen." Theoretically, it's a crime.
Yes.
But I've never heard anybody ever prosecuted for.
Well, it's a crime when they come across the border first illegally. So
to begin with,
yeah.
That's true.
I'm going to bring this up real quick and let you think about it because we're going to take a commercial break. Okay.
Okay.
And my idea or thought is, how can the federal government put pressure onto the states to have voter ID? Okay. We're going to go to the break. I'll let you think about that. And here's the commercial.
This video opens with fun-loving celebrity chef Guy Fieri on board a Carnival cruise ship. I'm Guy Fieri, and we're on Carnival. I brought the entire family, and we're having a blast.
A montage shows Guy's large and lively family posing for a family photo, riding Carnival's sky ride, and speeding down water slides. At Guy's Burger Joint, Guy serves up and samples thick, juicy hamburgers.
Have you guys had these burgers?
A crowd gathers at Guy's Burger Joint. Ground beef patties sizzle on a grill.
Look at that, big slab of cheddar.
Smiling, Guy pats down a man's head with a small cloth towel. Now, guests feast on the Piggy Patty, a beef burger with cheese, lettuce, tomato, and a second patty made of bacon.
Ryder!
Guy and his family play dodgeball at Sky Court, Carnival's multi-purpose outdoor court.
Ellis, you're out! Oh.
Now, Guy tours his newest Carnival restaurant. A sign reads, Guy's Pig and Anchor Barbecue Smokehouse. Our smoke is no joke.
This is the newest concept that we've done called Pig and Anchor. We have blue ribbon chicken, we have real deal brisket, we have beans, we have mac and cheese, pulled pork, you name it. Pitmaster.
Thank you, sir.
Guy fist bumps one of the restaurant staff.
Nicely done. Beautiful.
Guy points to a brisket with a crisp, dark brown bark.
Look at that bark on there. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Good dudes.
At Carnival Waterworks, a little boy speeds through an enclosed water slide featuring colorful lighting effects.
Bang for the buck, you can't beat a Carnival cruise. You get to see 3 different beaches on one vacation.
A montage shows a pristine beach surrounded by tropical trees and children snorkeling in a turquoise sea.
I'm not the pitch guy. I just do the restaurants. But dollar for dollar, pound for pound, you can't find a vacation like it.
Guy watches family members playing basketball. A young boy shoots a hoop from a distance.
This is exactly what this is all supposed to be.
A logo appears, the red Carnival funnel. Text, Carnival, choose fun. Copyright 2018 Carnival Corporation, all rights reserved. Carnival, choose fun, and the Carnival logo are registered trademarks of the Carnival Corporation.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that one. The reason I played that, I'm also a travel agent on the side, and my other channel on Channel 12 TV network is Jim's Vacation Emporium. So, yeah, so I'm a travel agent on the side. But have you thought about that question?
Well, there's a variety of ways that the federal government can place pressure on the states to do what they do what the federal government prefers. One of the interesting things that happened many years ago is that states typically had DUI regulations ranging from if you had 0.1 of blood alcohol level or up to 0.15 blood alcohol level. It varied around from state to state. And the federal government determined that for whatever reason they wanted the states to have a 0.08, that it was much safer to have 0.08 as a minimum level before somebody was charged with a DUI. What the federal government said that they would do would be they would attach the condition that the state pass a law requiring 0.08 as the legal limit to drink alcohol, or else the federal government would not send any of the federal highway funds to the state to build their roads and bridges. And ultimately, all the states complied, and all the states made 0.08 the national legal limit to be able to drink and drive. So the federal government has a variety of ways in which to compel the states to take action that they wish it to take action. A voter ID is an interesting prospect. Certainly, the feds again fund a variety of programs in the states that are related to elections, and theoretically they could attach it to something like that. However, it's a little bit different than the blood alcohol question, and it's different in this way that the federal government has, in fact, authority to regulate the time, place, and manner when it comes to the conduct of federal elections. So, in fact, the federal government just has to mandate that you have to have voter ID to vote in a federal election. Otherwise, you cannot vote in a federal election. Well, in that situation, it becomes nearly cost prohibitive for the states to run essentially 2 elections. One election for state and local offices where they have a I don't know, a signature requirement, or they just take somebody's word for it, or whatever process the state wants to use, and then follow the mandates regarding the federal election. So it would be pretty. I would expect that it would pretty much take place that if the federal government mandated that there was a need for an ID to cast a ballot in a federal election, that it would work its way through, and the states would have to pass that for local elections as well, because it just so that's kind of how that situation would work, and so that's really, really important. But I don't know how much longer we've got, Jim, but let's there's things that are really great, like voter ID, like single day voting, and paper ballots, getting rid of machines, paper ballots that are hand counted, which apparently they do in 46 hours in India, where the Indians have three times the voters that we have. Yep. So those are all wonderful ideas. Making election day a national holiday so that people are able to go to. There's all kinds of wonderful ideas in that regard. The situation regarding all those ideas, even including voter ideas, they require legislation. They require either a state legislature to do something with those ideas, or they require the National Congress to do something with those ideas. Those are not things that the president can do by executive order. They're not things that governors can do by executive order. They actually require legislation to become effective. I had touched briefly, I mentioned the National Voter Registration Act before. The National Voter Registration Act, when the Congress provided under the law these expanded opportunities to register through the Department of Motor Vehicles or Secretary of State's office, or other situations where, strangely enough, they required registration to take place at military recruiting installations or offices, and also state benefit offices. So there's all these other facilities that they began to allow registration to take place, or they actually mandated registration to be available. In return for that, the deal in the Congress was, okay, the folks that wanted the expanded registration situation, in opposition to that, folks said, if you do that, we're going to do something to make sure that we control the voter rolls and make sure that they're up to date and properly maintained. So the same law that allowed for motor voter also mandated the states to do certain kinds of things in terms of making sure their voter rolls are up to date and maintained. Among them is automatically removing folks that die.
Right.
That's an easy one. They should be automatically off the rolls, right?
Well, the same with Social Security. I mean, you got somebody that passes away, the funeral home's supposed to turn that into Social Security. Yeah. But then, of course, lately we've been hearing something else, but that's for another topic, another day.
Well, there's other things. Sometimes, theoretically, you're not supposed to be able to vote if you're mentally incapacitated. Really? If you've had a guardian, say if you've had a guardian of the person or a guardian of your finances appointed for you, theoretically, you're not supposed to vote because you're incapacitated. There's places where, of course, when you move from one place to another, you shouldn't be able to vote in the old place. Right. So there's this whole laundry list of things that the states are supposed to do automatically in terms of taking people off the voter rolls. Plus, there's provisions in the law that say when somebody hasn't voted for two, I believe it's two, or it's actually 3 federal elections over a 4-year time frame, because of the way it works. It turns out to be 4 years in that situation. Then the local election authorities are supposed to send a note to the voter and say, are you still living here? Is this still your location and whatnot? And give them an opportunity to return the card and say, yeah, I'm there. That's me. Please maintain my voter registration. And if they don't get a response within a statutory time frame, they're supposed to strike that name from the voter rolls.
Well, I see something with that though. Say somebody moved, okay, and they send it to that address and somebody else is there, and they could say in reference to, yeah, I'm still here, and it's not actually the person. Would it be better and beneficial with today's technology to where they have to go through the online and actually submit it that way?
Well, there's a variety of what I'm describing to you is the situation that exists,
Right.
as opposed to what we would like it to be. Okay, this and the situation as it exists is that way, and then also, of course, the situation is that these mails are supposed to be return requested. If the addressee is not there, then the post office should send it back, and
Right.
then those folks get stricken off the rolls. Or if they don't, if they don't return it, then they get stricken off the rolls. Well, guess what hasn't been going on since 1993?
That right there.
Largely, they have not been removing the dead folks, removing the folks that moved, removing the, in the appropriate states, the convicted felons, or the people that are non-voters that should not have been continuing to be on the list. As a result of that, currently the best estimate is there's about 29 million, which, bears a strange resemblance to the 20 some odd million votes that are missing from Joe Biden this year.
Yep.
But there's a strange resemblance that should not be on the voter rolls because the states have failed to live up to their obligations under the 1993 National Voter Registration Act, also known as NVRA. And I actually, under the NVRA, I actually filed a lawsuit for the Illinois Conservative Union back in 2020, or back in 2021, for a number of reasons, because they were not letting, the state of Illinois was not allowing folks from ICU to, in fact, review the voter rolls. They said, oh, yeah, you can come down and see the voter rolls, but you know what? You can look at the computer and look at them one at a time, and there's 8 million of them.
Wow.
You can look at them one at a time and see what the history is and then do some comparisons. And so we filed suit. And that's a long story. And Judicial Watch got involved with the suit that I filed on their behalf and whatnot. And so I became familiar with the NVRA in that regard. And strangely enough, Judicial Watch has done this been involved in NVRA litigation around the country in about a dozen states. One of which, the most effective of which, was in Los Angeles County. And in Los Angeles, they filed a suit against Los Angeles for not properly maintaining their voter rolls. In 2017, by February of 2023, Los Angeles had to remove 1.2 million,
Wow.
1.2 million lousy registrations that did not comply with the registration requirements under the National Voter Registration Act. So fast forward to November 5th, 2024. There's a fellow that was elected in Los Angeles County to be their prosecutor. His name's George Gascon, and he's probably most nicely referred to as a Soros prosecutor, right? One of those folks that says, "Oh yeah, you can steal up to $1,000 worth of stuff, and we're not going to do anything about it. And no, by the way, you can do all these things in the street that you shouldn't be allowed to be doing and messing up things." And so, of course, they have needles and homeless camps and et cetera, spread around town. So anyway, Gascon won that election with about 3.2 million votes, if I'm not, no, excuse me, 2.1 million votes. In 2024, George Gascon was running against Mr. Hockman. Mr. Hockman was the 2022 Republican candidate for Attorney General for the state of California. So you wind up with a Republican candidate for prosecutor of Los Angeles County, running against the Democrat, the woke liberal Democrat.
Right.
The woke liberal Democrat in 2024. Let's see. We'll just back up for just a moment. They removed 1.2 million ineligible registrations from the rolls by 2023, right? And in 2024, Mr. Gascon got what? 1.1 million fewer votes than he got in 2020. We can attribute a lot of that to the miserable woke policies that he was engaged in. However, Mr. Hackman got a few more votes than the Republican candidate did in 2020, but Gascon dropped from all the way down to 800,000 votes from 2.1 million, and so Hackman won. Los Angeles County elected a Republican prosecutor.
They needed it.
Well, not only did they need it, though, James, does anybody think that the cleaning up the voter rolls had nothing to do with it? The numbers are so close to one another.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, it did help. You know,
the numbers are so close to one another.
Yep. But people don't realize that, and they, you know, a lot of people don't understand what you understand, what we're talking about right here. You know, and it commonly makes sense. You clean up the voter rolls, then you have more of a competition, a fair competition, than the other ones that's been happening.
Then you have actual real elections.
Right.
You know, I mean, so while we can do all these things, all the other things, and I don't diminish any of them. They're all important. Same-day voting, paper ballots, you know, all the suggestions to improve the circumstance. The voter roll law is in place now. That law exists, and it allows for the private enforcement of the voter registration law, which is what Judicial Watch did in LA County, and what I did when it came to the Illinois Conservative Union here in the state of Illinois. And strangely enough, the outcome of that lawsuit was, strangely enough, all the state of Illinois agreed to in the end was they allowed the people to look at the voter rolls, which they had a right to do before we sued them.
Yep. They should have done their job.
They should have just said, yeah, okay, come and take a look.
Exactly.
Because the law says you can take a look, but we had to go to court to tell the State Board of Elections that they have the right to look at it. That it's a public record. It's crazy. So in any event, I will say that relative to filing a private lawsuit under the National Voter Registration Act, you have to go to the Board of Elections. You have to, or the election authority, depending where your state is, make a request that's relevant to the NVRA. You have to have them deny the request that you made. Then you have to take the denial and then write back to them and give them notice that if they don't comply with your understanding of the law, that you have this right under the NVRA, that within 90 days, you know, then you have the opportunity, then you wind up with a situation where you can give them notice again that you're going to file a lawsuit. You have to provide the state more notice after that. From the time that the ladies, which are, strangely enough, they're wonderful, wonderful women, Carol Davis being the head of the Illinois Conservative Union, and Carol describes herself as a granny on a mission. Yeah, she's a wonderful person. You should have her as a guest as well. But she and her team, group of four grandmothers went there and fought this battle.
Wow.
And I represented them. They took me out to lunch and said, Dave, you know, what can we do? And I said, okay, ladies, we'll help you out. And that's how that all got started. But in any event, they make a private either individual or organization jump through immense number of hoops before you can actually even file the suit. That's
why Trump likes getting rid of all that red tape.
Well, that's part of this situation. But the strange thing is that the Attorney General of the United States, under the same law, has the authority to wake up and file these. I don't want to diminish it, make it sound, but can they actually file the lawsuit tomorrow?
Right.
they can drag the state into court and say your rolls are no good. That's not to say that they don't need evidence and other things like that. But the truth is all the difficulties that surround your private laws, private citizens enforcing the National Voter Registration Act do not apply when the federal government goes to enforce it.
Exactly. It's like Illinois trying to say, or some of these democratic states, that the government has no authority over them. Well,
Yeah.
they do.
Well, the lawsuit in Los Angeles County, Judicial Watch filed it in 2017. It was not till 2023, almost 6 years later, before it was all kind of wrapped up in a bow, and saw to it that those voter rolls in Los Angeles County were cleaner
That's
than
one
they
good
had been
positive.
before.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so it was 6 years in the making. And what kind of private entities have the ability, the staying power, the authority to stick with the lawyers that are paid by tax dollars for whether it's the county or the state of California, the state of Illinois, when you're fighting those folks who can they go to work each and every day and they get their paycheck and they just oppose the lawsuit. And so it's a real tough road. There's another group called the United Sovereign Americans that they've got 9 lawsuits pending around the country. And Judicial Watch has others pending around the country. But the truth is I hope the USA, this authority for the United States Attorney has existed since 1993. And there's been litigation under the National Voter Registration Act, about 35, 36 some odd lawsuits. Of those, only 3 of them have touched upon voter registration and compliance with the obligations of the states.
I think that's to me, there has to be powers above that's trying to keep that from going through. It has to be.
Maybe they just didn't pay any attention. They're busy folks. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. They're busy people. We hope that voter issues are going to be addressed soon by the president and his new team, by Attorney General Bondi and some of the folks in the Department of Justice, some of whom I know from my work in both in the campaigns of 2016, 2020, 2021. In 24, I did not. They actually asked me to take my pick of doing either Wisconsin or Arizona in 24. I stayed here and worked with Bob Fioretti, who was running for state's attorney in Cook County. I took the attitude that I might be able to help the president a little bit around the edges out in Wisconsin or out in Arizona. But I had actually been with a group of 300 lawyers in Florida in August. And I thought, the president's, he's in much better legal hands than he was in 4 years previous.
Well, you're right. I think him, what he went through when he was in office, then what he went through when he's out of office for 4 years. He did his research. He got his teams together, and we are in a lot better shape than what we were with him in the first 4 years.
Well, I was blessed a couple of days ago, last week, to attend this event with Lara Trump there. And
I missed it. I had to work that night.
Yeah, it was a great event. Saw many folks and many friends. But there was a interesting different thing that might very well be the untold story of 24. Lara and her team from the RNC, including Michael Wadley, did yeoman's work in organizing election observers around the country and whatnot. And my understanding is that the count was about 230,000 people went and watched elections. I can tell you also that there was a different situation where there was one woman that I was familiar with because I worked with her in 16. Her name is Janine Bresso, and Janine is now Deputy White House Counsel. And Janine oversaw consolidating the litigation. And for the first time in advance of the election, they coordinated the lawsuits to protect the election among the Republican National Lawyers, the Republican National Committee, the Republican National Senatorial Committee, the National Republican Congressional Committee. It used to be those folks would all do their thing separately. And this time around, somewhere upwards of about 300 lawsuits in advance of the election
Wow.
to keep things from happening like happened in 2020 were filed. They were proactive in that regard. The untold story of what happened is the eyes that we had on the elections. Even here, folks like the Illinois Conservative Union, like the Illinois Freedom Alliance, around the country, I know Catherine Engelbrecht and her True the Vote folks have just did an incredible job of keeping an eye on things. I was, because of things that I've been involved in, I was asked from a couple of times to help train some folks on what to look for and what they should be doing when it comes to being poll watchers. And I started, while there's technical things that are involved, what poll watchers can do, what they can't do, and what they should watch for. I said, the very most important thing you can do is be there.
Right.
I always started out with this analogy. Everybody's going down the highway, right? And you're going 80, 85, whatever, while you're going down the interstate. And there's a police car parked along the side of the road up ahead. Then all of a sudden, they don't even know if there's an officer in the car, right? You don't even know. But everybody slows down just because the officer's in the car. So when you have this 250,000 people around, looking over their shoulders, looking over the finger, putting their fingers in the dike here, going to the processing facilities, being there for the early voting, activities. The officers or the election folks that are involved in messing with elections around the edges don't know what those people don't know.
Right.
They just know they're there, and it keeps them much more in line than they normally would be. And so because otherwise you have these circumstances where the election authorities are in a one-party jurisdiction where a single party has control of the election machinery, and nobody's watching what they do.
Well, it's an improvement then.
Yeah, no, it was a massive improvement.
Yes.
There should be a book about that. That should be called to people's attention. You talk about when you're at the gas station and folks go, "What? My vote doesn't count," or "Geez, what can I do?" Or this. Go to the poll and be a poll watcher. I don't care if you don't know what you're doing.
Just go.
Just have the credential and sit there, because they don't know. You don't know.
Right. Well,
And
we need a bit.
better behavior.
About ready to wrap this up. And I have one more topic. It's a law that I just heard came out. I don't know how true it is in Illinois. You can get up to 3 speeding tickets and nothing happen anymore. Have you heard that?
I haven't. No, I've not been involved in the. I used to know the motor vehicle code backwards and forwards. There was a time when I did that because I was a prosecutor, and I used to. And what you know what they do with baby prosecutors? What the very first thing prosecutors do? They go to traffic court.
Really?
I used to prosecute these kinds of things: driving without a license, aggravated speeding, that kind of stuff. And so I knew the statutes backwards and forwards. I've not had occasion to look at them for a while.
I'll have to check on it. I'd heard that. I think it was even on some social media site I saw. But so I'll look at it just to confirm it, and then I would know the next time. So anyway, is there anything else you want to say before I do my?
I will say this. Obviously, since November 5th, and given and of course the president was accomplishing things before he was even sworn in. Some incredible things were going on even before he was being sworn in, because clearly Biden had even abdicated what he was doing at that time. And these first 4 weeks and a few days since the president took office have been just amazing. They've been it's just an incredible whirlwind of activity, all of which has been, as far as I'm concerned, positive for America. if we want to see to it that the fruits of the president's victory and the work of he and his team are permanent going forward, and to secure them for our children and to secure the future of America, we must secure elections.
Yes.
We
And the
must
thing
secure
is,
elections. You can't overlook that. And so it's just, and frankly, I would think, you know, it's very strange. Real Americans should have the view that, you know, I don't really. It doesn't matter who wins. What matters is that the outcome actually expresses the will of the
for
people.
the people. Yeah. And here's
And
what
I'm pretty comfortable
right now.
with the will of the people if we actually have election system in place that actually measures the will of the people.
Right.
The last
And
part of the last part of that American creed that's in the Declaration of Independence is the consent of the governed. This is how we determine the consent of the governed. And if we don't do that, the president's agenda and the accomplishments that will take place these coming years will remain in danger if we don't secure the elections.
well, like I tell people, just because President Trump did get elected, the work does not stop for us as voters and the general public, because you have the April elections coming, you have the midterms coming, which you have to look at the down ballots, because we got to get the right people in the down ballots and supporting Trump, and not like a lot of people say there's rhinos out there. You know, we need to get the right people that are not rhinos and they're true Republicans and they're backing the agenda. And there's what I try to put through to people too. So I think that's, unless you have one more thing, and then I'll say my little thing, and then we'll put the exit video, and then I'll put you in the back room.
Just thank you for having me, James. It's a pleasure to be here, to have that opportunity to talk about a few things that are near and dear to my heart. There's all kinds of things that I love, but the Declaration of Independence states that ultimately all this is about the consent of the governed, and if we don't secure that, we're not going to secure the rest of we're not going to secure life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
We won't have the republic which we used to have. That's how I look at it. And we don't need to go down the swamp on the other types of governments that are out there.
Yes.
We
Thank you again.
Thank you. And Dave, it's been a pleasure. I mean, I learned from you, you know, and I just have to say, this is what more people need to hear. And one thing I do have to say, we need to put the Pledge of Allegiance back in the schools and the American flag in the schools. All right. So I want to say,
I'm sorry. I should have mentioned this before. That regarding the matters in Los Angeles County and the history of that, I know we touched upon it. There's an article I wrote that's in Illinois Review that folks can get the details. If you Google Shestokas Illinois Review, you'll find something that will describe. It still amazes me, James, and you shut me up when it's right, but it still amazes me that it's not national news. It's not part of the national narrative that a Republican won the election for prosecutor in Los Angeles County. So there's stuff where everybody says, well, this is deep blue, that's deep. No. A Republican won as the prosecutor in Los Angeles County.
that's a big thing, especially in California. We know that. Anyway,
thank you.
Want to thank you. And I want to thank everybody for listening to the Republican Town Hall Meeting channel on Channel 12 TV Network. Please subscribe, and for $9.99 a month, or $99 per year, $99.99 per year. And for everybody that's listening, it allows you to watch all the other channels, not just the Republican Town Hall channel meeting. And we were number one for viewership. We dropped a little bit. We're going to go back up. And anyway, thank you, Dave. It's a pleasure, and hopefully meet you again, because I'm going up to Rock Island on March 8th. So I'll be up there
Excellent.
covering that event. I just talked to the lady up there today, Angie, or Angie? I can't think of it.
Annie Parcher.
Annie, yeah, I just talked to her today. Yep.
Annie
All right.
Parcher. Give her
So
my best. She's a good friend.
Yeah, she's a real good lady. All right, we'll put you in the back room, and I'm going to get the end this recording and just hang on, okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Dave. It's been a pleasure.
Trump is a man, God is on his side. Heal our world, Lord, with Trump by your side. Your angels protected him, your hand moved his face. Without you, Lord, our world lost in space. Fight, 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 Trump is our life. Stand up, America, and help in this fight. Now guide us, Lord, and clean her face. The world needs Trump to make it a better place. Stand tall, America, with hope in your heart. Together we're strong, we'll never fall apart. Fight, 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 Trump is our life. Stand up, America, and help in this fight. Now guide us, Lord, and clean her face. The world needs Trump to make it a better place. Stand tall.